Do you think you know what power is?
That power is being right, being kind, being loved. You are mistaken. This video will show the dark side of power, the power no one talks about, the power few can bear to carry. Here, you will learn the hardest and most hidden lessons of Machiavelli, the truth that destroys your innocence and opens your eyes to a silent and absolute dominion. Stay with me, because what comes next will forever change the way you see strength and control. If topics like psychology, philosophy, and the darkness of the human soul interest you, subscribe now to the channel. You spent a whole life believing that being good, being kind, being understanding was the formula to be accepted and respected. You gave yourself without limits, listened when no one listened to you, offered forgiveness where there was only ingratitude. But this behavior, so admired in moral tales and legends, became an invisible burden that corrodes your soul. Kindness, when taken to the extreme, becomes a silent prison, a jail where your vital force is drained by those who do not hesitate to take advantage of your generosity. Machiavelli warns us, being good all the time is not virtue. It is vulnerability, and vulnerability, in a world of wolves, is a death sentence. While you invested your energies in pleasing and explaining yourself, the world moved in another direction, a direction where cunning and coldness are valuable currencies. Society still sells the illusion that altruism leads to victory, but that is the narrative of the weak who try to protect themselves from the truth. In raw reality, those who dominate are those who know how to play the game of power with strategic intelligence, who know how to hide their true desires and manipulate the pieces on the board without mercy. The end of the kind version of you is the beginning of your survival, not through brutality, but through awareness of your own strength and limits. This transformation does not happen suddenly or easily. It is a slow and painful death of the naive self, which still believes the world can be fixed with good intentions. It is necessary to accept that kindness used as a shield is a trap, a mask that hides a fragile and exposed soul. Machiavelli teaches us that real power demands a shadow, that hidden part of us that does not allow itself to be dominated by imposed morality, that knows how to be ruthless when necessary. This shadow is not the absence of humanity, but rather the force that balances the being beyond illusions. You need to abandon the need for external approval. Constant kindness attracts emotional parasites and hidden enemies. Every gesture of kindness misunderstood is a breach that opens the way to exploitation and internal wear. The end of naive kindness is the awakening to a new type of power, the power that does not need to be announced, that does not seek applause, that walks silently but firmly, imposing respect simply by existing. It is time to stop being an easy target and start building an invisible fortress made of presence and mystery. Finally, accepting this end is also accepting your own rebirth. Kindness does not disappear, but transforms into something deeper, an inner strength that does not sell itself, does not humiliate itself, and does not explain itself. It is strategic kindness, the kindness of the master of the game, who knows when to speak, when to act, and above all, when to be silent. This new version of you is the one that survives and dominates, not by violence or cruelty, but by the wisdom of silence and the awareness of the hidden power that resides in absence of need. This is the first step to becoming what few are, a true lord of your destiny. The birth of a new man demands the death of the old, and this death is painful, silent, and definitive. You are not here to become a monster, but to stop being vulnerable, to break the chains of naivety that bind you to an ideal the world never recognized as real. The illusion that kindness and transparency would be enough to navigate power dissolves before the eyes of those who understand the truth. Power is not for the pure of heart, but for those who accept the darkness that dwells in all of us. It is a rite of passage for those who wish to command and not just follow. Machiavelli warns us that love is fragile, dependent on morals and reciprocity, concepts that today seem abstract in the face of the practical cruelty of power. Love can disappear with a simple breath of betrayal or disdain, but fear is something different. It is an eternal prison that does not dissolve with apologies or empty promises. Fear remains alive even when the body is far away, even when the words are no longer spoken, because fear builds invisible empires, strengthens mental fortifications, and controls crowds with a single glance. Lasting power is born from fear, not affection. While you waited to be understood, analyzed, and accepted, they had already deciphered every move of yours, every hidden weakness, every repressed desire. You were not rejected for lack of merit. You were discarded as a useless piece for those who dominate the game. This rejection is not an accident. It is an invisible strategy that keeps the weak in the shadows and elevates the strong into the light of dominion. The naive man dies not with a blow, but with the silence of the powerful who ignore him, with the calculated indifference of those who know that true power needs to prove nothing. This symbolic death is the first step for your metamorphosis, not to become cruel or inhuman, but to embrace the part of yourself that must never be fully revealed. He who desires power must understand that true strength lies in controlling what is shown and what remains hidden, in choosing battles wisely, and in remaining distant from distracting emotions. This is the death of the innocent and the rebirth of the strategist. The silent master who observes while the world moves around him, never fully deciphered. Finally, accepting this death is accepting the deepest challenge of existence, overcoming the expectations of others, overcoming your own illusions, and understanding that the light you sought to illuminate your path was actually a curtain hiding the true darkness of power. The naive man disappears so that the archetype of the master, cold and calculating, can rise from the ashes. This is the inevitable transformation for those who want to transcend the ordinary and position themselves beyond good and evil, in the absolute realm of power. True power does not need to make noise to be heard. It does not shout. It does not impose itself with violence or empty words. True power walks barefoot, speaks softly, and yet manages to change the atmosphere of the room with its mere presence. Silence is the most lethal weapon because it not only protects, but attacks invisibly. While others lose themselves in frantic speeches and justifications, the one who masters silence observes, calculates, and strengthens himself. It is in silence that true strength is revealed, the ability to make others expose themselves, become confused, and surrender without realizing it. When you choose silence, you take control of the space. Those who talk too much give away their weaknesses, reveal their intentions, and show their vulnerabilities. Those who are silent, on the other hand, maintain a veil of mystery and power that disturbs others because the human mind fears what it cannot decipher. Silence creates a void that others are compelled to fill, often with their own fears and insecurities. This is the invisible dance of power. While you remain quiet, the other strips down, contradicts himself, and becomes weak before your attentive eyes. It is not necessary to win all battles in direct confrontation, because true dominion happens long before the debate begins. It happens in invisible strategy, in subtle manipulation of timing, in choosing the right moment to act, and above all, to be silent. Silence is not absence. It is intense presence. It is the language of those who do not need to prove their worth to anyone. When you are silent, you take the position of one who observes from the mountaintop, while others drown in the confusion of their own arguments. The power of silence also reveals itself in absence. Disappearing at the exact moment causes more impact than 1,000 spoken words. When you vanish, you leave a void that provokes anxiety, uncertainty, and fear. People try to fill this gap with their own doubts, imagining what you are planning, what you hide, or what you might do. This state of tension favors those who dominate the game because it keeps control over the narrative and over the emotions of others. Unpredictability is your invisible armor, and silence, your sharp sword. Finally, mastering silence is mastering yourself, your emotion, impulsiveness, and need for approval. It is not about being cold, but about being aware of the power that silence delivers to the master of the game. It is silence that transforms the mere man into an archetype, that commands respect without demanding explanations, that disarms without raising a sword. In this chapter, you learn that true power is not given. It is conquered with the most ancient language that exists, silence. In the game of power, visibility is not always an advantage. Machiavelli warns us of a profound paradox. Those who seek to be loved and admired, who leave clear traces, end up becoming vulnerable. Every exposure, every word spoken, every revealed gesture is an invitation for enemies, visible or hidden, to find breaches for attack. True powerful presence is not the one that shows itself, but the one that hides in the shadows of other minds, invisible and, at the same time, indispensable. Invisibility is not absence. It is a new kind of presence, more lethal and strategic. When you become invisible, you stop being an easy target. You stop feeding other people's egos with your need for approval, explaining your steps, justifying your choices. The power of the invisible lies in its ability to disappear at the peak, to maintain an aura of mystery that provokes fear and silent respect. In a world full of noise and excessive exposure, the scarcity of information about you creates a mental hunger in others, a silent anxiety that disarms them. The human mind hates gaps. The more you offer, the more they fill them with their worst assumptions. You do not need to show yourself to exist. Silence, withdrawal, the simple fact of not being available are powerful tools for those who want to dominate. Delaying responses, strategic absence, momentary disappearance, all of this builds an invisible fortress that others cannot invade. It is as if you were a ghost presence, a shadow that no one can grasp, controlling the environment even without being physically present. This is the power of invisibility, existing so subtly that your mere absence weighs more than your presence. The invisible one knows that power is not in what is seen, but in what is felt. An absence at the right moment is a stronger statement than any fiery speech. It is silence that creates tension, that causes others to react predictably. You transform your invisibility into armor that protects your mental and emotional territory, becoming unreachable even for the fiercest attacks. Power thus conquered does not depend on recognition, approval, or the spotlight. It is established in the solidity of controlled absence. Finally, accepting invisibility as the new presence is to embrace a power few understand, the power of silent control, indirect manipulation, psychological dominion. It is understanding that always being in sight is always being under attack, and that the true lord of the game is the one who moves in the shadows, who knows how to disappear in order to reappear stronger, who controls not through spectacle but through mystery. In this chapter, you learn that invisibility is not weakness, but the purest and most effective manifestation of true power. Cruelty is not synonymous with uncontrolled brutality, but a calculated tool of the master of power. It is the silent knife that cuts deep, without noise, without the need for justifications. When you exercise strategic cruelty, you do not act out of impulse or anger, but with the cold precision of one who knows the impact of every move. To punish once, but in a way that the pain remains in memory, is much more effective than 1,000 explosive and empty reactions. This is the hardest lesson for those who still believe that power is synonymous with infinite kindness. denying opportunities, refusing favors, disappearing when expected. All these are acts of cruelty that need no explanation. They create an uncomfortable void that others fill with their own insecurities, doubts, and fears. This controlled absence is a silent punishment, an invisible mark that leaves a longer-lasting impression than any noisy scandal. Unpredictability, the ability to not be read, not be anticipated, becomes your best defense against enemies and false allies. Strategic cruelty is also a weapon of internal protection. It maintains the emotional distance necessary to avoid being manipulated by guilt, charity, or apparent justice. While many let themselves be dominated by emotions, the master of power learns to dose them, to use empathy as a tool, not as weakness. This delicate balance transforms cruelty into an invisible shield that guards your psychological territory and keeps predators away. To apply this cruelty, absolute self-mastery is required. It is not acting like an irrational tyrant, but being the lord of your own psyche, who chooses when and how to hurt in order not to be hurt. This strategic awareness avoids the wear of constant conflict and transforms every act of refusal or silence into a clear and powerful message that reverberates in the silence of relationships and the shadows of power. The silent pain you cause teaches more than a scream because it leaves invisible marks on the minds and hearts of others. Finally, strategic cruelty is an invitation to abandon the illusion of unconditional kindness and embrace the complexity of real power. It is to understand that to exist at the top, it is necessary to cut ties, deny affections, and impose limits firmly. This cruelty is not the end of humanity, but the beginning of true freedom, the freedom to be the master of your own emotions, your own choices, and your own destiny. In the end, only the strong carry this cross, and only they reach the throne of invisible power. The true master of power never acts on impulse or emotion. His actions are the result of precise calculation, meticulous strategy, and a deep understanding of human nature. He knows that reacting driven by anger, pride, or haste is to surrender control to another. Therefore, every move he makes is anticipated, studied, and pondered. Acting without thinking would be to betray his own power, to open breaches for adversaries to exploit. The master's non-negotiable code demands absolute discipline, mastery of one's own emotions, and timing of actions. In this code, there is no room for requests or pleas for respect. The master creates respect and even fear through calculated absence. He does not need to demand anything because he imposes presence with his posture, with the silence that speaks louder than words. Physical or emotional absence becomes a command, a limit that others recognize and learn to respect. Thus, power is not given by others, but built by the firmness of one who knows the right time to appear and the exact moment to disappear. The master understands that control of the social environment depends on others' perception, and that perception is shaped by careful management of appearances and reactions. Words are measured, gestures rehearsed, and emotions hidden when necessary. The master does not expose himself to avoid weaknesses nor surrenders to gain favors. He is always one step ahead, reorganizing the world around him, dictating the rhythm and atmosphere, making others adapt their actions and words not to break his invisible rules. This posture makes people change their behavior in his presence. They speak carefully, avoid delicate subjects, and often hesitate before acting. This is the power that does not depend on shouting or threats, but on the silent authority that paralyzes. It is the power of the master who does not ask, does not plead, and does not explain himself, but controls everything by the mere fact of existing. It is dominion born of restraint and firmness, an invisible fortress that cannot be conquered by violence, only respected. Finally, following this code is to accept a lonely and demanding path. The master does not allow apparent weaknesses, does not let himself be carried away by fleeting emotions, and remains unshakable before the storms of the world. This strategic stillness is the source of his power, what makes the world turn around him, and what transforms an ordinary man into an archetype of absolute control. You do not act on impulse. You act on calculation. This is the supreme rule of true power. The greatest prison a man faces is not outside, but within himself. As long as you keep reacting to situations driven by guilt, excessive affection, or a desperate pursuit of justice, you will be chained to a game of manipulations you can never win. These emotions, so noble at first glance, become the invisible chains that limit your freedom. Machiavelli understood this truth with brutal clarity. Emotion is the trap where the weak fall, and only those who master it reach true power. You want to seem good, just understanding, but this desire to please becomes your most exploited vulnerability. While you wish to be accepted, respected, and loved, others learn to use these expectations against you, manipulating your feelings for their own gains. Emotion is a bargaining chip for those who know how to trade it, and the master of power needs to break this illusion to be free. It is not about denying that you feel, but about acting as if nothing affects you, even while feeling everything intensely. Machiavelli was explicit in stating that justice is an invention of the weak to limit the strong. This phrase is not an invitation to injustice, but a call to awareness. The real world is not guided by universal moral principles, but by interests and strategies. As long as you hold on to the idea of acting as it should be, you will always be manipulated by those who play without the same limitations. The master of power transcends traditional morality, acting based on effectiveness and cold calculation, even if that means acting in an unpopular or uncomfortable way. This chapter is an invitation for you to go beyond the surface of what you feel, to look deeply inside your own psyche and understand that mastery over your emotions is the last step to absolute freedom. You feel everything: anger, love, fear, but you do not allow those feelings to control your actions. This is the crucial separation between the ordinary man and the archetype of power: feeling without being a slave, acting without being a victim. This is the last chain that needs to be broken, so you truly become master of your destiny. And when this chain is broken, you will no longer be at the mercy of the whims of the world or others' expectations. You will be an impenetrable psychological fortress, a presence that inspires respect and silent fear. You will feel everything, but act as if you feel nothing, and it is in this impossible balance that supreme power resides. Machiavelli promised neither comfort nor friendship, but a hard path for those willing to accept the naked truth of power. The transformation you face is not only personal, it is symbolic and profound. You cease to be a simple individual with weaknesses and passing desires to become an archetype, a greater, almost mythical presence that transcends the ordinary. The accessible man, the one who bends to others' expectations, who seeks to be understood and to please, is dead. In his place is born a psychological entity that dwells in the shadows of power, a strategic shadow that acts with precision and imposes silence and respect without raising its voice. This metamorphosis is a passage to a new realm of existence, where emotions are controlled and used as tools, not as chains. The archetype is not a hostage to anger, fear, or excessive compassion. He masters and transforms them into fuel for his ascent. The strategic shadow is not absence of humanity, but the purest presence of contained power, that invisible force that paralyzes and dominates without needing explanations or justifications. Silence in this new state is no longer just a weapon, but a trademark. It creates a space of mystery and fear, an aura that makes others hesitate and restrain themselves before your presence. The archetype does not care to be loved or understood. He wants to be respected, feared, and remembered. His existence weighs on the environment. His absence is felt as a dangerous void. This balance between presence and absence is the essence of the strength that transcends the ordinary man. It is important to understand that this transformation demands sacrifices. You abandon the comfort of social acceptance and easy relationships to enter a domain where isolation and solitude are inevitable. But it is in this solitary space that true power is forged, away from gazes, away from social masks, in direct contact with the essence of control. The archetype is born from pain, silence, and the decision to no longer submit to rules imposed by others. In the end, this metamorphosis represents the definitive ascent. If you want to leave behind the role of victim and become the lord of your destiny, subscribe to the channel. You are no longer an ordinary man navigating chance, but a force of nature, an implacable presence that shapes the world around you. The archetype is power incarnate, silent, invisible, immortal. These 2 videos before you are not here by chance. And if everything you believe about yourself is just a reflection of someone else's gaze, click now on one of the videos beside and start breaking that mirror. You will have to risk the click. So, which one will you choose?